Do you tend to be a kind person that's always serving others? Have you experienced a religiously destructive relationship or an emotionally destructive relationship? Hi, I'm Tara. I've been there too. And this podcast is all about us living brighter and ever growing 1% at a time. I always talk about live brighter 1% at a time. And today we're going to talk about the power of living brighter 1% at a time. First, let's talk about 1% at a time. Any change, 1% at a time, can make for a drastic change in a year, and an even more drastic change in 5 years, and even more drastic in 10 years. So the power of 1% is super powerful. And living brighter, I think that's just such an intentional thing. And for me, it really started with like an awakening and aha, which actually was tragedy, that started this, I'm going through the motions, this is not good, and all of that. But it really, for me, started with awakening, a choice that I'm not going to continue walking this journey the way I am. I'm going to surrender to God's wisdom because obviously I don't have things figured out, and my idea of how it's supposed to be is not how it's supposed to be, and it's not adding up. So I feel like the journey or the growing 1% at a time is like going through the rooms of our house and cleaning each room up, allowing God to kind of put things in order and move things around and have a greater understanding. And I feel like that is a very intentional thing, and it can happen quickly, slowly. It can happen lots of different ways, but that's what we're going to talk about today. So I want to give you context of my journey, and everybody's journey is differently, but the whole point of this is to show how 1% can make a very big difference and how that kind of looked for me. So, context. Got married in 1995, had a baby in 2001. Long story short, my personality is I was kind, giving, people pleaser, great at submitting to my husband. I was also exhausted. I was also sick a lot. I was also in a relationship that felt very destructive. And the point when I had kind of an awakening actually was in about 2011. And that was when I was in the psych ward for the second time, which is always an interesting story. And you can hear details of my story in the first 8 episodes of Live Brighter with Tara. But the whole point is I was in the psych ward at that time, and I had been off of medication for quote unquote the bipolar that I had. And I'd been off for 5 years, but the relationship I had with my husband at the time was getting very destructive in this 5-year cycle, and finally culminated to a time where I'm like, I feel like there's something wrong, which was denied before, but he's like, yeah, something is wrong. You made that comment 5 years ago. I've been bitter about that ever since, and it's your fault. And it was just a time where I could not handle that cognitive dissonance and stop sleeping. So it was always that agreement that we had, like if I ever had challenges mentally, that I would get back on medication. And unfortunately, I tend to be a little sensitive to medication. And so that ended up going to a psychiatric ward and have them trying medications on me until we could get that taken care of. But at that time, what I realized was the definition of crazy was doing the same thing and expecting the different result. And, here I am in a psych ward. But I realized that how I was going about my marriage, my life with God, my life with Christ, I'm doing the same thing. I'm expecting that to have different results, but yet time has shown me that I'm not going to get different results unless I be the change. And so that was actually my time when I realized I had an awakening. And I realized that, for one, I had put fear of my husband above my love of God. And so it really showed me that I was just not aligned, and that I was all about serving others, and that had cost me so much of my health. Like I just had inflammation. I had, so many things. I had thyroid issues. I had plantar fasciitis, hormonal issues, so many things. But that was like basically a reflection of so much hurt because, the biggest challenge with my husband is we did not resolve conflict. I was not allowed to without getting punished for 6 days and bring it up again and he'd be ignored another 6 days. So never got anything resolved. And that just went internally. I think a lot of times that could come out as bitterness or resentment. For me, I just over forgave, which, I have a whole episode of my thoughts on forgiveness. But my body kept the score and it was harming me a lot. And so that's where I was at in 2011. Very much not, if I do this with God in this way that I deemed right, that I was going to get this result, and I was not getting that result. And I'm like, okay, I must have things wrong. And so I just opened my mind. I opened my mind to just being wrong and realizing I had really kind of gotten a little black and white, like this is sacred, this is secular. If I do submit to my husband like this, then God is going to get a hold of his heart. And I really had to open my mind as to my part of the problem, how I was training him how to treat me and things like that. And I really did not have the words to even understand our relational dynamics. So I just had to open my mind in such a different way than I had before and just submit it to God and be like, okay, God, teach me. Show me what's going on because I don't understand it. Show me how to proceed because I just don't get this. And so that's what was going on, and that's where it started the journey. And it started with very strange things like different books or this pieces where really God was speaking in a whole different way. Because I had this very black and white, God speaks to us through the Bible, and but he could speak through whatever way he really wants to, and really not limiting how he wanted to speak. And really being attentive to hear things that normally I'd be like, oh, that's not God. And really be like, let's think about this. What am I hearing? What am I saying? And so in 2018 is when I chose a divorce because after putting some things in motion, I'm like, things are not going to change. I can either struggle mentally for the rest of my life and not being able to take care of my kids, or I have to be the change. I have to take action. And that was very difficult. And it looked crazy because remember at that time I was still diagnosed as bipolar. And so it looked really crazy because I actually didn't tell my family. I didn't tell my friends. I set up a plan. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go live here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to just, start with that and had a plan of how I was going to do things. And it looked very crazy. But for me, I'm like, it's not going to matter how I leave because I have so many people putting their opinions on me and so many different thoughts that I'm going to look crazy no matter what. And so I decided okay, this is on me. I'm going to just do it. And I really felt like time would tell the story. And I trusted in God with that. And so, I really felt like I got to this point that if I wanted to kill my husband or go crazy or murder, then I really needed to think about a different way about going things. And for me, how it manifested is I just mentally could not handle the cognitive dissonance. And that was where I was going. So when I chose a divorce in 2018, it was a struggle because also, how was I going to view God? Was I going to let God continue with me on my journey, even though, quote unquote, divorce is wrong? And I had all of these ideas about divorce and about how God viewed it, that it was very hard for me at that time to I didn't understand it. I didn't understand. I do a lot more now, but I didn't understand it then, but I had a choice. It's either God goes with me or he doesn't. And I've had so many friends choose not to have God go with them because they were programmed or led to believe that their Christian marriage and stuff like that was a reflection of God's character and who he was, and it wasn't. Or they were completely disappointed with God because they thought if they were faithful and served that they would get this output. In fact, I just went for a walk with a friend couple days ago, and she just said, I had done everything right and God let me down. And it's so easy to have that perception and idea because I feel like that's kind of the black and white like teaching we sometimes get is we are faithful, we will get this result, A equals, A plus B equals C. And God is so outside of that, and his ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts, and we cannot understand it. So I didn't understand it. I had no clue. I didn't know, like, God, are you like really disappointed? Da 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 da. But I'm like, you know what? He knows all. He sees all. He knows me. I'm going to just go and be super authentic with him on how I feel about him, my thoughts, because I was pretty pissed at him too. And just like have a different relationship with him that's just really built on honesty and, back and forth. So I chose for God to go with me, but I definitely had to think about that because it's a struggle, especially when you're in a destructive marriage that had God, quote, in it. Very difficult. So leave thinking time will tell. Totally had a horrible, people pleasing definitely got more resolved at that point because I couldn't please anybody and I just realized it. So I realized I had to own my life choices. I had to own where I was at and that I was basically the accumulation of my choices and what I allowed, because not making a choice is making a choice, and not allowing things is actually allowing it, and just things like that. So I had to really do a deep dive into myself, and that's really when the journey became much deeper. And what I would call it is like a journey is just like that 1% is where we take time, intentional, from our schedule, whatever it is. Like it could be 10 minutes, it could be whatever it is. And at the time, I was a realtor, a single mom, and working a lot. So I didn't have a bunch of time, but I was very intentional about taking that time, giving God the next layer, the next room, and being like, okay, what do I do with this mess? And just like hearing however he wanted to speak and really resolving that. So, some of those things at that time was the guilt and shame and pain of a divorce. That's very challenging. Even though I was the one that was initiating it, the divorce was really the manifestation of a very dead and abusive marriage. And it was really just the final act of something that was already lifeless. So, but it was still, there's a lot of guilt, shame, especially from a Christian background. Oh my goodness, that was its whole issue. And then also my kindness. Like I really felt like my job was, I'd been a homemaker for like 15 years, and my job was to be kind and all of that stuff. So I had to go through so many rooms of my house, and I'm still going through rooms. So I'm not putting this in past tense. But the main rooms are cleaned out at least. So some of my rooms that had to be cleaned out was guilt, shame, pain of divorce, healing from that. My view of kindness and what that meant, my thoughts on love, on marriage, like even on the spirit world and parenting. Those are all layers of the onion that one at a time not just one, sometimes I'd be dealing with a few at a time, but really focused on, okay, God, help me to understand this and just teach me. And it would come all different weird sources, and I can't even describe. It would be like nature or people or connections or a book or however. God is wanting to speak to us, and he's speaking to us all the time. I think I just wasn't opening myself up to how and what he was saying, and that was just allowing me to be teachable. So layer after layer after layer, and taking a little bit of time each day to unravel my beliefs, my thoughts, and just go before God and heal and get restored. And that was the unraveling process. And that's where the Unravel Notebook, the book available on Amazon, came from, is some of those pieces. Because I really do believe each of us are our own expert on ourselves. Like only really we know, and we've got the spirit in us, we're made in God's image. So only we know our next step and what we're supposed to do and heal and and to hear God's voice. And we all hear it differently, but he's speaking to us all. And so just allowing ourselves to be receptive to that and having that two-way relationship of talking and listening and even arguing and saying like how you feel about God's thoughts and just different things. It's a conversation, like really having a conversation. Are you a chronic people pleaser? Do you overgive, overfunction, pretty kind, and you're just tired, or maybe even a little bit resentful? Or are you wondering, like, wow, is this all to life? Is this how it works? Because I kind of feel like I'm going through the motions. Well, that's what the Unravel Notebook is for. It's 61 days to unravel our thinking, beliefs, and live a life intentionally as we connect closer with God, ourselves, and others, so we can be more confident and live brighter in this world. That was, that's the growing 1% and kind of where things are at. And then I'm still a realtor, and I do that probably about 80%, 90% of my job. And then I'm also a life coach and a hypnotherapist. And so the 1% basically has led me to this point now where realtor, life coach, hypnotherapist, married, have a wonderful marriage. And boy, I'm still working on my ideas of marriage. And I'm going to talk about some other layers of the onion I'm on now. But that is a great way to bring up some more things that I have growth on and I need to just hear about and learn about and restore. So other passions that have come out of that is Hope Harbor Transitional Living, and that is a rental and mortgage assistance program. It's a nonprofit, and it is also for counseling support and a growth plan. And so that is the nonprofit that I started because it's so difficult getting out of these destructive situations from just the emotional, financial, everything. And so once a person is out in our area, having that assistance financially and emotionally on the growth plan is, to me, super important. And so that's a passion of mine. And we're in the process. We've had one person go through the program. It was amazing. Now we're in the process of we have funds, but we're trying to match those funds and growing, because it takes probably about 10,000 a person to really support them in their transition of going from a destructive relationship and a destructive situation to supporting themselves and in this environment. It's a lot of challenge. So still journeying. I'm really passionate about, I love one-on-one life coaching hypnotherapy. It's amazing, the transformations. They're very powerful. And I really believe in the group coaching and just the dynamic of learning and growing with other people and hearing their stories and just allowing that. So I'm really excited about, hopefully this in the fall, to have a group that via Zoom that we're all doing that together, because it's so powerful. It's just really amazing. So that's what I'm passionate about. And currently my journey, or my rooms, or sometimes I call it my onion layers, because just when you think, oh gosh, got rid of that onion, and then it's like, oh, there's another onion layer, another. So it just keeps happening. So right now, my onion layers have to do with, something I've noticed is I have a lot of fearful dreams where I'm like protecting people and and saving, which is strange because I don't actually think that consciously. But I definitely have some unresolved fear when it comes to, trying to, I don't know, I'm not exactly sure, but definitely kind of a root there that I'm working on and trying to figure out. And understanding, because fear has definitely had an impact in my life. Fear of man. I could talk about fear a lot, and just how fear and faith and all of that. So definitely working on that. And I love it when my subconscious is telling me that I still have work in this area. So that's where I'm working on right now. Another area is about marriage, because Mike and I have been married 2 years, and it's wonderful. And I can't, it's so amazing to be married to my best friend and just loving each other the way we do. And my struggle comes with, I still have some work to go through, because I really struggle with marriage being kind of some entrapment. And and my husband and I talk about this, and he's so good about, he's so happy for me to pursue my dreams, and I struggle with us both pursuing our dreams, and struggle with the idea of trapped and stuff like that. So it's more on my side, but that's something I'm working on still. And a lot of that involves doing my journeying and having a counselor, life coach, hypnotherapist, but really just having that dynamic relationship where God is speaking and I'm listening and I'm being intentional. Like, okay, God, I think this is the next layer, and I process it. And really going through the journey for me is about like awareness, processing, and just surrendering after I feel the feelings and feel all the feelings. Because one of the big things with my journey is I used to be like, oh, anger is wrong, rage, all those things are wrong, wrong, wrong. Realizing that anger is very indicative of some changes that need to be made or boundaries that have been crossed. And same with resentment and listening to my body and all of those things. And rage, like I would have thought, oh gosh, rage is like ungodly and unholy. And honestly, it is a great, like processing rage is just so powerful. And then just surrendering it. And really, I feel like, another way to look at this journey is like chapters in a book. We can start like by the title of this chapter was like, I could have like had my chapter of 22 years of marriage that was very destructive be like, I am the victim. And really, just changing those stories, like doing the journeying and doing the processing, and then changing those chapter lines to being something that is like, I am the victor. Like those were like, that was a stepping stone to get to where I am. That was the working tilling ground to help me, to the next step. And I'm still being tilled and worked on and all of that. But kind of defining those chapters intentionally, not as a victim, because I feel like if I keep it as a victim, it's not owning my part in it. And it's really not allowing me to grow fully from the lessons I've learned and from what I was supposed to get out of that. Because I really believe that God is good, that's a hard thing to really like believe onto you. But that belief means that all the crap and all the shit I've been through, God has something very valuable and important for me to get out of it, out of that shit stew is what I call it, get the diamond out of the shit stew. And, just kind of be willing to look at each of the pieces like that. That doesn't mean good things happen. And doesn't mean any of that, because it's not that. But really defining things so that the chapters are the learning lessons and the thriving and the victor. And we can all be victors of our own life. And that has to do with our healing and our thoughts and all of that. And so that's super important. So I just challenge all of us. This is to live brighter 1% at a time and to pursue this journey. I will be honest with you. It gets harder before it gets easier, because choosing to do it means that we're going into our past, we're going into our traumas, because a lot of the stuff that happens to us today is actually a reflection of unhealed stuff from our past that kind of keeps repeating the same message. And so it's hard, it's difficult, and it's so freeing and so rewarding and just really allows us to have the abundant life. But it's not easy. So I just will warn you, it gets harder before it gets easy. The biggest thing is just knowing that God loves us, like each of us. He knows everything about us, and he completely, utterly loves us. And that's just such a hard concept to understand. Another thing is like, we are worthy, each of us. We're worthy because God created us for this time and place. And he made it. We're all in the image of God. We are worthy, and we are more than enough. And I feel like we give away all of those things because we give away our enoughness, our worthability, because of this and this and this. So it's really about like, taking back those golden grains of our worthiness and love. And I just really, believe in visualization when it comes to that, and just visualizing like all of those golden grains that we've given out that haven't been reciprocated and have been trampled, and just literally just envisioning all of those golden grains coming back to us, and really just vacuuming off, like I literally visualize this, vacuuming off all of those identifications, all those pains, all those things that really are not ours to carry, that I'm not enough, not, all of those stuff, and just vacuuming it off and just sending that vacuum or blowing the vacuum up, whatever you want to do with the vacuum. But I really do believe that God doesn't call us to cope. He wants to heal us and restore us. And he wants to replace the years. There's a verse in the Bible, the years the locusts have eaten, that he's restoring that. And I really believe if we surrender to this journey and we surrender to our, just having those conversations with God and, allowing him to heal and going through this intentional journey, that it is just so beautiful and powerful how we each end up living brighter and in different ways. That's what's so cool, is just how different we all are. And really that allows us to show our colors, our flower, or the gem, that we are. And I just think it's so beautiful. Anyways, I support you in your journey. I support you living brighter 1% at a time. That's what this podcast is really about. I really love hearing from everyone. And so if you ever want to hear, tell me about your journey, tell me about what's going on, you can go to my Instagram on Live Brighter with Tara. You can go to my Facebook, Live Brighter with Tara. You can go to my website, livebrighter.info. I would love to hear how you are growing and journeying, and I support you. And let's all grow 1% at a time. Make it a great day.